If you can still hear the satisfying click, click, click of dialing a rotary phone, if you remember waiting for that dial to spin back before choosing the next number, your brain has been shaped by experiences that younger generations will never understand. And here's what's fascinating. Neuroscience shows that growing up in the analog era didn't just give you memories, it actually wired your cognitive processes differently. You're not stuck in the past. You're not resistant to change. Your mind operates with patterns that are becoming increasingly rare in our digital world, and psychology is revealing why that makes you uniquely equipped for certain challenges that overwhelm others. In this video, we explore the 5 distinct cognitive traits that define analog-era minds, traits that neuroscientists are only now beginning to understand and appreciate. If you've ever been called old-fashioned for preferring face-to-face conversations or felt frustrated by how distracted everyone seems today, you're about to discover that what you've been experiencing isn't nostalgia. It's a fundamentally different way of processing reality. Here's what's happening in your brain when you approach problems. Growing up with rotary phones, cassette tapes that you had to rewind, and television without remote controls trained your neural pathways to think in sequences. You learned to complete process A before starting process B because the technology demanded it. Modern neuroscience research shows that this kind of sequential training strengthens the prefrontal cortex regions responsible for linear reasoning and cause and effect thinking. This might show up as your natural ability to follow complex instructions without getting overwhelmed. When someone gives you directions with multiple steps, you process them in order, building a mental map as you go. You might find yourself naturally better at cooking from recipes, assembling furniture, or troubleshooting technical problems because your mind automatically breaks complex tasks into manageable sequences. This isn't being slow or methodical in a negative sense. This is possessing a cognitive framework that younger, digitally native minds often lack. Psychology calls this sequential cognitive architecture, and it's directly linked to lower rates of task, switching errors, and better long-term project completion. While others jump between browser tabs and lose their train of thought, your brain maintains logical progression because it was built in an era where you physically couldn't skip ahead. That's not a limitation. That's a superpower in a world drowning in distraction. Here's what's happening in your brain when you wait for something. The neural networks that govern delayed gratification were significantly strengthened during your formative years because waiting was unavoidable. You waited for photos to be developed. You waited for the dial to return. You waited for your favorite song to play on the radio so you could record it. Neuroscience research on neuroplasticity shows that repeated exposure to waiting periods during childhood and adolescence creates more robust connections between your prefrontal cortex and limbic system, the areas that manage impulse control. This might show up as your ability to sit through a long book without needing constant stimulation. You can watch a slow, paced film without checking your phone. You might find yourself able to have extended conversations without feeling antsy or needing to fill every silence with noise. Your tolerance for life's natural rhythms, for processes that take time, isn't just personality. It's neurology. This isn't being outdated or out of touch with modern speed. This is having emotional regulation capabilities that mental health professionals are desperately trying to teach younger generations through mindfulness training. Psychology calls this enhanced distress tolerance, and it's one of the core competencies in dialectical behavior therapy. Your brain developed it naturally because your environment required it. While others experience anxiety when their internet buffers for 3 seconds, your nervous system remains calm because you've been neurologically prepared for waiting. That patience isn't weakness. It's psychological resilience that's becoming increasingly rare. Here's what's happening in your brain when you remember things. Your memory formation occurred in an environment where information wasn't instantly retrievable, which forced your hippocampus to develop stronger encoding and storage processes. You memorized phone numbers because you had no choice. You remembered addresses, song lyrics, facts from encyclopedias. Cognitive psychology research demonstrates that this kind of active memorization creates denser neural networks in memory centers compared to brains that developed with constant digital access to information. This might show up as your ability to recall specific details from decades ago with surprising clarity. You remember the texture of experiences, the context surrounding events, not just isolated facts. You might find yourself able to navigate familiar areas without GPS because you built actual cognitive maps of your environment. Your memory isn't just about storage, it's about rich, multi-sensory encoding that creates deeper retrieval pathways. This isn't living in the past or refusing to use modern tools. This is possessing what neuroscientists call embodied memory, where information is linked to physical actions, emotional states, and sensory experiences. Psychology recognizes this as superior memory integration. while younger generations struggle to remember what they read online 5 minutes ago because they know they can Google it again. Your brain created permanent neural structures around information because permanence was your only option. That depth of memory isn't just nostalgia. It's cognitive architecture that gives you richer access to your own life story and accumulated wisdom. Here's what's happening in your brain when you engage with your immediate environment. Growing up without smartphones, without constant notifications, without the ability to photograph every moment trained your attentional systems to fully inhabit present experiences. Your brain's default mode network, the neural system that activates during rest and reflection, developed without the constant interruption of digital alerts. Neuroscience studies show that brains formed in pre-digital environments have different baseline activation patterns in attention networks, specifically stronger sustained attention capabilities. This might show up as your ability to have dinner without checking your phone, to sit in a waiting room without needing entertainment, to take a walk and simply observe your surroundings. You might find yourself genuinely listening when someone talks to you, maintaining eye contact, processing their words instead of planning your response. Your capacity for single-focused attention isn't coincidental. This isn't technophobia or resistance to progress. This is having what positive psychology calls presence capacity, the ability to be fully where you are without constant mental escape. Mindfulness meditation, which is now a multi-billion-dollar industry teaching people skills you developed organically, attempts to recreate this neural state. While others scroll through their phones during conversations, because their attention systems were shaped by intermittent digital rewards, your brain can sustain focus because it was built in an era of singular engagement. That presence isn't simple. It's a sophisticated cognitive gift that enhances every relationship and experience you have. Here's what's happening in your brain during social interactions. Your mirror neuron systems and theory of mind capabilities developed through face-to-face interaction as the primary communication method. You learn to read facial micro-expressions, vocal tonality, body language, and conversational rhythm because phone calls and in-person meetings were your only options. Social neuroscience research shows that brains formed through primarily analog social interaction develop more sophisticated activation in the superior temporal sulcus and medial prefrontal cortex, regions critical for understanding others' mental states. This might show up as your ability to sense when something is wrong with someone even when they say they're fine. You pick up on subtle emotional cues that others miss. You might find yourself uncomfortable with text-heavy communication because you instinctively know how much information is lost without vocal tone and facial expression. Your social intuition, your ability to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics, stems from neural networks built through thousands of hours of analog human connection. This isn't being overly sensitive or reading too much into things. This is possessing what psychology calls advanced social cognition, the foundation of emotional intelligence that employers now desperately seek. While younger generations struggle with basic conversation skills, after growing up with screens as social intermediaries, your brain developed rich, complex models of human behavior through direct observation and participation. That social intelligence isn't old-fashioned. It's a rare and valuable cognitive trait that makes you indispensable in roles requiring genuine human connection, leadership, negotiation, and deep relationship building. If you've ever felt out of step with the modern world's frantic pace, if you've been told you need to adapt or get left behind, now you understand what's actually happening. Your brain isn't outdated. It's differently optimized. The truth is that the cognitive patterns you developed in the analog era, the sequential thinking, the patience, the memory depth, the present moment focus, and the social intelligence, these aren't relics. They're increasingly valuable capabilities in a world that's rediscovering the cost of constant digital immersion. Subscribe for more psychology insights that explain who you really are and why your unique wiring matters more than you've been told.